Okay, I have another episode for my Miracles and Signs series. A lot of you probably know, I've mentioned on several occasions on my podcast or on my YouTube channel, that I grew up on welfare, uh, always lived in rundown houses or trailers, or not all of them were rundown. I'm just saying there were quite a few that were. Um, we were on food stamps when me and my kids, we were on food stamps, Medicaid, WIC, housing assistance. We were on all kinds of government assistance because I was a single mother and I worked sometimes two jobs and didn't really get help from child support. So I qualified for a lot of government programs and I took advantage of those opportunities. When I needed them. I couldn't stand being in the welfare system. Now, don't get me wrong. I greatly appreciate it because it helped me tremendously to raise my kids by myself and to, progress in life. If it had not been for these programs, I probably wouldn't have ever succeeded. I would have if God wanted me to, of course, but I'm looking at it in a different perspective. But it gave me another perspective to be in the welfare system. It allowed me to be able to talk about it like right now here with you. But yes, these programs greatly benefited me. I feel like without them, I would have been in a lot of trouble. So I've always been a writer. Since I was about 13 years old, I've been writing books or poetry or song lyrics or, creating fantasy worlds or all kinds of stuff. As long as I was writing something, even in my diary, I was happy because that is what I was born to do. God gave me this gift to write. Again, I always say, whether I'm good at it or not, it doesn't matter. It's what I love to do. And I always wanted to do something with my life as far as writing is concerned. Now, of course, you have a gift, you have a talent, you want to pursue that, and you want that to be part of your career or or a large part of your life, right? So I was living in North Little Rock, Arkansas, in a government assisted apartment, housing assistance. And I mentioned in my previous episode that, I was in a 4-bedroom, 2 full bath apartment, and I only paid, based on my income, $76 a month. And that was including utilities. So it was amazing for, something like that. But the problem came when I go back to the part about, I'm tired of being in the welfare system. Of course, there's always benefits and there's great things about it, but then there are going to be things that are not so great. And I'm going to list off those things really quick so you can just kind of get a perspective for my situation. There was, and this is a good thing that the apartments did generally, but in the moment it feels very invasive. The apartment that I lived in, they did inspections like probably twice a year. I don't know. I don't really remember, but let's just go with twice a year. And, you had to deep clean the apartment. You had to make sure that even under where the stove, there's a light under above the stove. You have to make sure you angle your head and make sure there's no grease stains up there because grease, pops everywhere when you cook. And, it had to be spotless or, you could get written up. But it sounds worse than it really is because, like I said, it's really a good thing that they do this because it helps people who might not be, inclined to be clean. It keeps their property nice, and it gives people who might not otherwise have it some responsibility. And in the moment, I couldn't stand it. I was a clean person, but I wanted to clean on my own time. I didn't want someone to tell me, okay, you need to clean your apartment between these hours because we're coming to inspect. It's just very stressful, and nobody likes to be told what to do, when to do it. But that is life, okay? And I may have been against it back then, but when I look back on it, it was actually a really good thing. So I'm not complaining about that. I'm just like I said, giving you a perspective of my situation. But there are, like I said, there are some things that being on welfare are not so great. You have to go every 6 months to a year, depending on what the assistance is, and you have to update. You have to sit in an office and wait in line, things like that. Just basically, they're just inconveniences, right? But aside from that, I had never owned my own home before. I was looking at this vicious cycle of being in the welfare system. My mom was also on different types of welfare with me and my brothers, and then I was carrying on that legacy by doing it with my kids, and I just didn't want to continue to live that way. Not that it was bad. I'm not saying that it was bad, but when you live in the welfare system, you feel like you want to be independent from it and be independent just in general. You want to have some kind of success in your life. And a lot of people who have to depend on some kind of welfare, whether it's housing assistance or food stamps or both, like me, you just really want to feel like you have a sense of accomplishment. And it's a little hard to do that when you're in the welfare system and you don't make very much money from your job, and it's kind of hard to get anywhere in life. So, long story short, while living in this apartment that I very much appreciated, I still wanted my own home. I wanted to be able to not worry about paying rent, even though I was paying very little. I wanted to be able to clean my home when I wanted to clean my home, and I wanted to have a home where no one would come in unless I invited them. And living in an apartment, whether it's government subsidized or not, you run the risk. You got maintenance and all kinds of other, situations where people can come in and out of your home whenever they please. If you're not there, if something happens, they can go into your home. You want to have a home where no one else has the key. Okay, basically I don't want anybody else having a key to my house. So I looked at my kids and I wanted something better for them. And I didn't really know how to do that. I didn't know how to accomplish something like that because I didn't make very much money. I wasn't poor because I had food stamps. I had paid very little in rent, had a nice apartment. My kids had everything that they needed, but there was just always something that I wanted, something that was missing. We were happy the way we were, and I even think back on those times a lot, where I used to take my clothes to the fun wash laundry on JFK, and my kids would play, around the arcade machine, or I would bring a book and I'd have my clothes laid out on the table. I actually still miss that. I'm not going to lie. I love going to the laundromat. And I remember this is quickly off topic, but I'll make it quick. When I did finally get my house, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute, there were a couple of times, even though I had my own washer and dryer in my home, there were a couple of times that I missed the laundromat so much that I just took my clothes there instead of doing them in my house. So anyway, back to the point. I just wanted something better for my kids. And I started thinking about our situation a lot, and about how I wanted to own my own home, but I didn't know how. So I kind of winged it, I guess. I didn't have any idea, a direction of how this was going to happen. But I did start by planning to save money. So I took a bleach bottle, the big gallon of bleach, and I cleaned it out, cut a hole in the back, and dried it out real well. And I told my kids, okay, so here's what we're going to do. Anytime we get any extra change or make any extra money somewhere that after, you've already bought what you want. So I always give them a little allowance every week. If they bought something that they wanted, if they had some pennies left over, just put it in the bleach jug, right? So I told them one day, we're going to go around and we're going to pick up cans off the side of the road. And thinking about it back then, it didn't really seem as crazy as it sounds. But we were, me and my 3 kids walking around the area, the neighborhood, picking up cans and putting them in a trash bag. And I got this idea because I lived not far from a recycling center. And I thought, okay, every little bit will help. So that's what we did a couple of days for probably about a month or so. We would pick up cans, and then I would go to my mom's. She lived a few miles down the road, and we would pick up cans in her neighborhood. And we took them to the place, and we got money for them. Wasn't much, but it was something to put in our bleach jug. So when I realized that this was going to take a long time to save money, I didn't get discouraged. I just started thinking outside the box. I started thinking, okay, what else can we do to make money, to be able to at least put a down payment on a house? Because it was going to take a very long time because that's a lot of money. A down payment is a lot of money, especially on a house. So I was online one day and I saw an article. I don't remember where it was, but there was an article about a college student, a young woman, very pretty, blonde, and apparently she had set up a fundraiser for people to donate to her to pay off her credit card debt. She had about $75,000 plus dollars in credit card debt, if I remember right. I could be wrong, but I remember it was a massive number. And not only did she raise enough money to pay off her credit card debt, but she made more. She made probably twice as much as what she was aiming for. And the thing is that, it was a little discouraging, this part, because she, I went and did a little more research on her. And, like I said, she was very pretty and she was young and, obviously she didn't have any kids or anything like that. She looked like a party girl. I don't know if she was a party girl, but the pictures that she posted made her look like that's the kind of thing she liked to do. And she was very, nice to look at for a young guy, a young man or whatever. And so I thought, okay, well, if these people can help this young girl with no kids pay off credit card debt, which she did by spending, and she explained this. This isn't just me assuming that she just blew her money and ended up in credit card debt. She was telling people, I don't remember even where, it was the social media somewhere. She was telling people like how she ended up with all this debt. And it wasn't anything like, hospital bills or, necessities. It was things that she was just spending a lot of money and she couldn't help it. And oh, please help me. So I thought if people can actually donate to help this girl, then maybe they'll donate to help me. So I set up a little fundraiser thing to help us me and my 3 kids to be able to afford to buy a house, even if it was just a down payment. And I put a picture of me, a nice picture, a respectable picture of me and my 3 young children. And I spread the word as much as I could on social media, but I spread the word the only way I knew how, using the only resources that I had at the time. And I really didn't get anything from it. I didn't get anything, not even a single penny. No one donated. So I thought, well, okay, maybe I don't have enough followers. Maybe enough people aren't seeing it. But basically, I just felt like nobody really cared about, a single parent with 3 kids, just trying to do the right thing. I was working hard, long hours, and I barely had enough time to write around this time. And my kids were good kids. They went to school. They made good grades. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I put that in the little bio about why we needed help, and about me living in the welfare system and just wanting something better for my kids. But not a penny. Did not get a single penny from this. And this went, I had left it up probably for about a month, maybe almost close to 2 months, before I just kind of forgot about it. I don't to this day remember if I even took it down. It might even still be up. I don't know. But so I just kind of thought, okay, I need to figure something else out, because this wasn't working either, just like the bleach jug. So then I decided, because my daughter is a really good artist. From a very young age, she was always good at drawing things and painting, and she was just very good at art. And I thought to myself, okay, well, maybe I could sell some of my kids' art, not just my daughter, but also my 2 sons. My 2 sons didn't really draw much. They weren't into it, but they were young. So I thought, well, they're kids, so I can tell them to draw some things. So that's what I told them to do. So after they drew some pictures, and I put them up on a website, so I thought, okay, I can just maybe people will bid on my kids' art. If it's just a little here, $5 or $10 or something like that, it's something. It's something to put in the bleach jug, and so we can save for a house. And I thought for sure this time, people would, maybe take a little pity, because it's kids. It's like kids' art. But the most thing in the moment at this time, yes, I wanted donations, but at the same time, I really wanted at least one donation for each kid, because I didn't want my kids to feel bad that no one wanted to buy their art. And that was the biggest thing for me, because I was really worried, like, if nobody donates even $1, because I had already talked about how nobody donated to us for the house, but we're going to try to do this with your art. And I was, making it sound like not over the top, but I was trying to encourage them. And because I was kind of sure in my heart that someone, at least one person, would donate something. And then I started to kind of regret it, because I didn't want someone to not donate and then my kids feel like their art wasn't good enough. So I was just like biting my tongue the whole time, like, I hope someone buys something, even just one picture. And no one did. Not one person. To this day, I still feel, if you're a parent, and when you feel like bad for your kids for something like that, like someone hurt their feelings, or bullied them, or nobody clapped for them at their audition or their game, or whatever it is, the feeling I'm talking about. And it's one of the worst things to feel that someone has hurt your kids. And so I just kind of played it off like, I just don't think anybody really sees it, because I don't really have big followers or anything like that. I don't have, a lot of people who know who I am. So when it came down to it, I had to explain to my kids that their art didn't sell. I kind of, did it with a soft blow. I didn't want nobody bought it, and be mad about it. I just tried to encourage them and tell them that everything's fine. It's not your art. It's just because no one's seeing it. And I know that really wasn't the case. I do recall a couple of people commenting, maybe in the comment section, or I don't know. I just remember a few people comment. So people saw it, but, no one really did anything. And I'm not saying that those people who commented should have donated, because it was nice enough that they commented. And then I also showed my kids the comments, so at least they would feel good about that. But the point is, nobody donated. So I got really discouraged and kind of sad. And I thought to myself, how can people just throw money at this young woman who had all this credit card debt, but not help, a single mother who just genuinely needs it and wants to do better for her kids. But that's just how the world works. And sometimes, not all the time, but in my case, that's how it worked. I just felt really low. I felt bad in the beginning of this project. I really had good feelings. I had good feelings when, I set up the initial fundraiser, and even it didn't work. I still, okay, try again. I had good feelings about, trying to auction my kids' art. But when that didn't work, because I was worried about them feeling bad, that's when I started to feel bad myself and a little negative about the situation. So, this is where the miracle comes in, where my prayers were answered. Because the next thing I did was pray to God. I just prayed. It wasn't a desperate, heartfelt prayer like when in my tornado situation. It wasn't one of those terrified, desperate prayers, but it was just a regular, sincere prayer. I prayed to God. I said, will you please just help me to be able to afford a house and maybe, a little bit of money to send my kids to college. That's all I wanted. That's all I asked. And this is not an exaggeration. This is not a joke. Within about 2 to 3 weeks after I prayed this prayer, I ended up feeling like I needed to quit my job. And I have talked about this before in past episodes, but I didn't really go into this much detail about the praying. I didn't go into the stuff before about needing the house like I just explained. But before, I actually quit my job because I was, as you know, I was working to support my kids by myself. It was the only job I had. At this time, I was working long hours. It was one job, but long hours. And it was kind of crazy to think that if I quit my job for writing, I'm really taking a huge risk here. This is not something normal people do. This is not something sane people do. But I knew I wanted to finish this book. I had just gotten the idea to write The Edge of Never. And I had started writing it, and I felt like I need to finish this book. And there was just something in me that propelled me forward and told everything that I did. I ate that book, I slept that book, I drank that book. I needed to finish this book. And I knew that the only way I was going to be able to do that was to quit my job. And I remember, this is only probably about 2 to 3 weeks after I prayed to God to please help us. And so I did. I quit my job. Then I wrote the book, The Edge of Never. And I hit the bestsellers list within 2 weeks after publishing it myself, because it was self-published. So I was checking my sales one day, and I noticed there were a massive number of units in my dashboard, of sales units. And I thought, that can't be right. That's not right. Because I started adding because back then they didn't have estimated earnings like they do now in the KDP dashboard. KDP is Kindle Direct Publishing, where you can see how well your books are selling, how many copies you've sold, and it gives you an estimate of how much money you've already made in that day. That back then they did not do that. They had just the sales, how many sales you've made, but you had to add it up yourself, how much money that was. I don't remember exactly, but for one day, I made $7,000 one day. And I still couldn't believe it. I just said to myself, something's wrong with their calculation. It's a glitch in the system or something like that. But I kept adding it up, and I checked my book, and it was way up there on the bestseller list, on Amazon's top 100. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, maybe this is real. And so that's how it all started for me. Because by that time, I had already hit the bestseller list. I was number one on Amazon for 2 weeks in a row. I made lots of money, lots and lots of money from Amazon and from Barnes & Noble. But it happened. I prayed to God simply, please help us to be able to afford a house. Even if it's just a down payment. I said, please let us be able to afford a house and maybe, send my kids to college. I was afraid to ask because these were material things, money and a home. And I felt a little guilty asking for something like that. There's nothing wrong. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with praying for things like that. But for me personally at that time, I just felt like I wasn't supposed to do that. So, but it was heartfelt, it was sincere, and I desperately needed it. I desperately wanted it. I'm not going to say needed, because like I said, we had a roof over our head. We were happy, but we wanted something more. And so I prayed, and just within a month, because like I said, it was about 2 to 3 weeks after the prayer that I quit the job and realized that I needed to quit the job to finish this book that suddenly I was so passionately working on. And after that, that's when I hit the bestsellers list. I was number 2 on the New York Times. I don't remember what number I was on USA Today and Wall Street Journal, but it was up there in the top 10. And on number 1 on Amazon for 2 weeks, like I said. And I made, for 2012, I made $1.4 million. And if that's not enough to buy a modest home and send my kids to college, I don't know what is. But not only did he give me the money for the house and for the college that I asked for, he gave me so much more. I'm still, to this day, in 2023, I'm still living off that money. My prayers were answered. And that's another one that I can definitely call a miracle, because I prayed for it and it happened just within a month. And not, the strange thing about it is this is something huge. This is something that we're in this situation. I was wondering, how in the world am I going to make enough money in a short amount of time to be able to afford a house on the salary that I was making, being on welfare, living in government housing. How in the world was this going to happen? I had no idea. I didn't have any inkling or path forward in any direction, except the things I thought would work but didn't. The donation thing and selling my kids' art, but those didn't work. And when they didn't work, the only thing I had left to do was pray. And I didn't pray for anything specific, like make this happen or make this happen. I just asked for 2 certain things, and it was given to me tenfold in a short amount of time. I didn't have to, like a lot of people, when their prayers are answered, they wait, years, maybe sometimes even a lifetime before it happens. But it still happens because it's in God's timing, as we all know that. Nothing happens outside of God's timing. But in that moment, God's timing for me was was in a month. And I will forever be grateful, because I know that he answered my prayer and I was blessed in this miraculous way, not just with a little down payment, and not with just, a scholarship for my daughter to go to college, but enough money to completely pay the house, to buy a house in full, without having to make payments, without having to deal with interest rates or anything like that. And I had enough money to pay my daughter's complete college. So I couldn't have asked for anything more, but he gave me way more than I asked for sure. So that is another one of my miracles from my Miracles and Signs series. I still have several more, and I can't wait to tell you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time.